right, Bart Sibrel. Thank you so much for sitting down and talking with me. I know you're a busy guy.
No problem.
And the other thing is, I know that I saw you on Danny Jones, and one of the things that you mentioned is this isn't something that you want to keep talking about. So I really appreciate that you're sitting here with me and going over it again. I first heard about you. I think it was back in 2011, and this is when that viral incident was going around with the astronaut that punched you. And I watched your documentary, "The Astronauts Gone Wild," and at the time, one of the things that really uh, made me start to question this whole moon landing conspiracy thing is that the interviews. In about a year or two ago, I watched it again after the Joe Rogan podcast that you did, and there was a lot of things off with those interviews that you did. And when I'm watching them, one of the things that stood out was you spoke with an astronaut that about the Van Allen radiation belt, and he was completely clueless. And that made me question it even more. You ask him, about going through it, and his response was something like, "Well, we were employees, or we were on this ride to the moon." And so I had to take a step back, or like a pause, because I was like, "Wow, wait, don't astronauts aren't they supposed to know about that stuff? Aren't they scientists also?" Um, for you, when did it really kick in for you that this might be a fraud?
Well, I grew up believing originally that they were real and being very enthusiastic about being mesmerized by the pictures of men on the moon that I got as a child. And when I saw someone from NASA suggest that they were falsified, I went back to the pictures and looked at them differently and saw what appeared to be a change in the foreground and background to a fake backdrop. And I had later become a filmmaker whose job is to make fake scenes look real, and would continue to look at the pictures that I thought for many years were on the moon and realized they were absolutely taken with electrical lighting, which means they're on Earth. And
Yeah.
so that kind of explains why here we are 56 years later and they still cannot put a man on the moon. So if they can't do it today, how could they possibly do it in 1969? And so I produced a film. The first one is called "A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon." It's on the homepage of Sibrel.com. That's S as in Sam, I, B as in boy, REL, Sibrel.com. And you can see in it classified footage we uncovered of the crew of Apollo 11 faking being halfway to the moon. They're using a kind of a mock-up of a 1-foot model Earth and pretending that it's the Earth floating in space. The lights come up and you see it's fake. And I'm like, okay, so if they're faking being halfway to the moon, it means they can't go halfway, which means they can't leave Earth orbit. And here we are 56 years later, and they still cannot leave Earth orbit. In fact, with 5 decades better rockets and computers, the best that NASA can do today is send an astronaut 1,000th the distance to the moon. So how could they have 1,000 times more space traveling technology in 1969? You can't have greater technology in the past than in the future. I mean, just 10 years after the atomic bomb was blown up for the first time, atomic bombs were 1,000 times more powerful. So if they could go to the moon on the first attempt with 1 millionth the computing power of a cell phone, we would have been on Mars 10 years later. We'd be in another solar system by now, and there'd be bases all over the moon. So the problem is people want to believe their team won the Super Bowl, right?
Yeah.
Americans are first on the moon, and you come along and say, well, they cheated. They drugged the other team's Gatorade and they bribed the referee. They don't want to hear it. And that's kind of the different thing about this particular lie, other than who killed JFK or who did 9/11. It's a positive lie.
Mhm.
And people don't want to give that up. And they're really not even open-minded. And the degree of their closed-mindedness actually proves that I'm right. If someone teaching aerospace as a professor in college, they told me that if Neil Armstrong confessed on national TV that the moon missions were fake, they would still think he walked on the moon anyway. That's how much people have made a false god out of this. And when you realize that they did fake it, and it's that footage, you saw the second film first, and I presume you have seen A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon?
Yes.
Okay. Well, you saw the footage of them faking being halfway to the moon with a third track of audio of the CIA telling them to fake a 4-second radio delay.
Right.
And when I saw that, I'm like, oh my gosh, they actually did fake the moon landing. This footage is in my film, and 2 NBC news directors agree it proves they did not leave Earth orbit and therefore did not go to the moon. And the Washington Post agreed as well, but he was told if he did a story about it, he would be fired. NBC was told if they broadcast it, they would be unplugged by the FCC. So it's very serious. Yeah, and in a way, Jesse, it's more profound. I mean, either they planted a flag, on the moon, even though they can't do it today, and or the most powerful nation on earth falsified mankind's greatest accomplishment, bribed people, murdered people, made heroes out of traitors, and murdered people to cover it up. If that's true, which it is, that's so much more significant. And yet the public doesn't know. It's like having cancer and not knowing. We have to know that the government is so corrupt that they did indeed fake the moon landing. And if they did that, what else are they doing?
Right.
Previously, according to the dead man's relatives, the CIA killed President Kennedy. The CIA killed their own president, according to the dead man's relative, not my opinion. And a few years later, according to the defense secretary, they completely made up a fake attack from North Vietnamese on an American ship to start the Vietnam War. They made it up. And yet Congress passed a law based on an event that they admitted later never happened. So if they're willing to kill their own soldiers without reason and their own president, I don't think they're going to have a problem faking a video image of the moon when there's no independent press coverage. And according to the flight director, he said someone in the command center during the launch cannot tell the difference between a practice flight and a, quote, real flight. Looks all the same to them. So they did get away with it. People don't want to hear about it. But when it dawns on you, they really did fake the moon landing. Oh, my goodness. It's just so sad that our country and our world is so depraved, juvenile, and corrupt that they would do such a thing. But they did. And it's better to know that you have cancer than to pretend that you don't.
Right. One of the other things that really stood out to me and was this image that you talk about of the double shadows. Now, I went to film school, and when I saw that, I understood immediately what you were talking about. Let me see. I can share this really quick here for you. And let me see if let me do. All right, there's the. Okay. There we go. Okay, so this image that you talk about, where we've got these crossing shadows here, I understood this because in film school, when your first introduction to lights, at least for me, working with these RE lights, these tungsten Fresnel lights, you can get this. You can also get these shadows that are like overlaid shadows, where you have a darker shadow and then a lighter shadow. In this image right here, are you?
What I would recommend is you make the image on the right full screen while we're talking, so that most people might be watching this on their phone, and that might be pretty small by the time it translates. So see if you can just make that full screen while we're talking about it.
Okay. So I've got it full screen here on my screen.
But I'm seeing you, and then I'm seeing like you side by side. I meant
Oh, I
making it
got you. I got you.
the only image being shown.
No problem. Let me do this. Let me reset this. And let's do that. Let's do this. And let's do that. All right. How's that?
There you go. Okay. So what we have here on the bottom is a picture, and you can zoom in a little bit if you want, so that we're
Sure.
just getting the photographs.
Let's see if we can-
Yeah, there should be a zoom button somewhere, just a plus sign. Anyway, the one on the bottom is how shadows should look in sunlight, that they are parallel. You'll see the sun being about 93 million miles away, being a million times bigger than the Earth in volume. It's going to cast shadows in the same direction over an entire Earth or moon. Go outside on a sunny day, look at two trees, two telephone poles, two people standing, and just like here, you'll see the two shadows of the two telephone poles always run parallel. It's impossible for them to intersect. It's simply mathematically impossible for shadows to intersect if they're lit by the sun. Above it is a picture they claim was taken on the moon, where an astronaut shadow is at 12 o'clock and a rock 5 feet away. Its shadow is at 9 o'clock. A 90-degree difference from objects 5 feet apart. That's either one light really close or two lights really close. In either case, the top picture was absolutely taken with electrical light and not sunlight, which means they're on Earth. He can prove the moon landing is fake with one picture, because that picture, the one in black and white, which they claim was on the moon, it's impossible for that to be replicated in sunlight. Go outside and stand and get a rock and put it in the same position and see if the shadows intersect at 90 degrees in sunlight. It won't happen.
Right.
But it does happen here because it's electrical light. You could go into a TV studio and you could easily replicate that with one or two electrical lights. So that proves it in one picture, that the moon landings are fake. It's over. I mean, and that's mathematical proof that would prove it in a court of law. So I don't know what else to say. They did fake the moon landing, and it's right in front of your eyes, and people still won't accept the fact because it's too horrific to accept.
One of the other things that you guys were talking about on Danny Jones was this idea about replicating this with a wide lens. Is that possible here? Because it doesn't look like a wide lens. If it was a wide lens to do this, you would see a lot of distortion. That's not what's going on here, correct?
Well, no, people try to replicate this with cell phones. Unfortunately, a cell phone lens is about, I don't know, the circumference of about, 3 millimeters. And it's a very wide angle lens. It's almost fisheye on most cell phones. The pictures on the moon were taken with 50 millimeter lenses, which is moderately zoomed in a bit, and there's no curvature. So, and some people take pictures of cell phones, the shadows appear to be a slightly less parallel, and over a great distance might appear to come to a same point, but they're still not intersecting at 90 degrees, right?
Yeah.
Even with the curved lens of a cell phone, they're still not intersecting by 90 degrees, and they're still proving me correct, because you can't have a person standing where the astronaut's standing and put a rock in a similar position and have the shadows go at 90 degrees in sunlight, even with a curved cell phone lens. You know what I mean? So what can you do? The point is they're intersecting. They're not going to a point like in perspective, right?
Right.
And a curved lens bends those lines together a tiny bit, and it would look like they would come to a point in a far distance. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about them intersecting at 90 degrees when they're 5 feet apart from one another. So there you go. I mean, that proves it. I mean, that's over. I mean, you're looking for mathematical, scientific proof that the moon landings are fake. It's right in front of your eyes. You cannot have two shadows intersecting at 90 degrees from objects 5 feet apart if it's taken in sunlight, which means, and of course, Danny Jones's producer replicated
Mhm.
This picture, remember with the trash can?
Yeah.
He did it at night, and he did it with two light sources. But on the
Mhm.
moon, there's only one light source, the sun, and there's no atmosphere, right?
Right.
It's 20 times brighter on the moon with no clouds than a desert on Earth and a cloudless day at noon. 20 times brighter, right? So there is no reflective amount. I mean, imagine going out on, let's say, a sunny day in your parking lot at work and shining a flashlight. You think you're going to see the light of the flashlight in the
No.
sunlight? No, it's not
Yeah.
even going to show up. So there is no reflective surface. The Earth far away, or Saturn, or the lunar module, or the soil, and all that is diffused reflective light anyway that doesn't cast a direct shadow. So the way he duplicated that picture was with two equal electrical lights that were really close to one another. So his producer actually proved the moon landings were fake when he was trying to prove that they're real.
Yeah.
One of my clips at Sibrel.com is a National Geographic special. They go out, they're trying to contradict. You can go to the top button there, Moon Man video links,
Oh, okay. Here we
right
go.
under Sibrel.com, and then go down to, let's see, it was like NASA fan proves moon missions are real. I think it's, keep going down, it's number 13, it looks like. I'm pretty sure it's number 13. And you can scroll through this with the audio down if you want. But basically, my film comes out, it upsets a lot of people. I prove mathematically that the moon missions were fake by the intersecting lighting. So the National Geographic produces a film to reassure people that the moon missions are real. So they go out to a desert at night, and they say, the voiceover says, well, we can't duplicate the sun. Keep going a little bit forward, more forward, more forward, keep going. Now, yeah, on the video, keep going. Just drag it a little faster, and I'll tell you where to stop. Keep going. Keep right there. Okay. So you need to pause it. But in
Yeah.
any
Let me
case,
pause it.
they say, okay, well, we can't duplicate the sun. So what we're going to do is we're going to go out to a desert at night and bring in a big spotlight. And they say, see, look, the shadows are going to eventually come together. In fact, the voiceover says they're intersecting at almost 90 degrees, which proves the moon missions are real. But it actually proves the opposite. They're duplicating the intersecting shadows with an electrical light. They bring out a big spotlight and they say, well, we can't replicate the intensity of the sun, so we're going to use a spotlight instead. And by using a spotlight, which is the whole point, if one person is to the left of a light that's really close and one person is to the right of it, they're going to cause diverging shadows, right?
Yeah.
And they say this proves that the moon missions are real, when in fact, it actually proves that they're fake. They say they can't duplicate the sun. Sure, they could. They could get there 12 hours earlier or 12 hours later, right? And
Right.
have people stand in that desert under the sun. And I assure you, the shadows would be parallel, just like they were in my example with the two telephone poles. So they bring in an electrical light that's really close. They get intersecting shadows and they say, see, it proves the moon landings are real, but in fact, it proves that they're fake. How are they trying to brainwash people? They duplicated the intersecting shadows of the Apollo pictures with an electrical light, which means the Apollo pictures were also taken with an electrical light, which means they're not on the moon. It boggles the mind. They're proving me right. All the while they say they're proving me wrong. It's sad. I mean, these people, are they brainwashing themselves? They brainwash the public? I don't know what they're up to.
So let me stop this real quick. It's for me, I buy all of this. Okay. I believe that, these images are fake. The video is obviously fake. How did we just shoot a Saturn V rocket into space with nobody in it? And that was it?
I believe the astronauts were on board
Okay.
so that they could have zero gravity footage of the peanut butter sandwich floating by,
Mm-hmm.
but they never left Earth orbit. I mean, here we are 56 years later, And no human being from any country can leave Earth orbit. That's why there were mannequins orbiting the moon in 2018. In 2014, NASA said they're going to have people orbiting the moon in 2018, and 4 years behind schedule in 2022, they had mannequins orbiting the moon. I see. So with 1960s technology, which had 1 millionth the computing power of a cell phone, when they only put men in space for the first time a few years earlier, they can drive cars on the moon, they can play golf on the moon. But today, with 56 years better technology, they can only have mannequins orbit the moon. I mean, come on, people. How much more proof do you need? And my book, which goes into the backstory of a funny thing happened on the way to the moon and astronauts gone wild, as you showed, it's interactive with 17 video links. You read a chapter, then I say go to link 1, link 2, and so forth. And one of the links is a NASA engineer saying to go to the moon, you'd have to go through deadly radiation, and the technology to do so has not been invented yet.
Yeah.
I mean, he says it right there. We must solve these radiation challenges before we send people through this region of space, meaning the technology has not yet been invented. He just said they couldn't go to the moon, and he's a NASA engineer. Then we have another astronaut saying that they intentionally destroyed all of the technology they used to go to the moon. Now, it's never happened in the history of the world that a technology was created, and this one at a cost of an equivalent of $250 billion, that once the technology was created, they destroyed it, the blueprints, the schematics, and everything having to do with that technology, they intentionally destroyed it. It's never happened in the history of the world, except with the technology that allegedly put a man on the moon with 1 millionth the computing power of a cell phone. You see, if you really went to the moon, you would never destroy a $250 billion investment.
Right.
However, if you perpetrated a fraud, that's exactly what you would do, because you could prove the rocket did not have enough fuel to leave Earth orbit. It didn't have enough radiation protection. It didn't have enough battery power to put air conditioning on the moon for 3 days. That's why they destroyed it. If they were ever going to destroy a technology, maybe the atomic bomb. But like I said, they didn't. Just 10 years later, atomic bombs were 1,000 times more powerful. All of this space technology increases exponentially.
Right.
They should be, walking on Mars 10 years after the moon and be in another solar system by now, and there'd be bases all over the moon, but they can't even leave Earth orbit 56 years later. They've said they're going to return to the moon 10 times. They said we're going to be back on the moon in 5 years. They've said it 10 times. They've had 50 years. They keep postponing it, postponing it, postponing it. NASA has never kept a schedule, not a single time in their entire history, except the most complicated mission of all time.
Right.
Going to the moon for the very first time, they were ahead of schedule. How about that? And then they destroyed not only the technology that proves how they did it, they destroyed all the telemetry data where the rocket was, and all of the original videotapes right before they were going to be transferred to HD TV to be projected on IMAX. I mean, how much more proof do you need? Shadows intersecting at 90 degrees, the fact that you can't have greater technology in the past. We have this proof of them faking being halfway to the moon with the third track of audio of the CIA telling them to fake a 4-second radio delay as if they're halfway to the moon when they're really in Earth orbit. And then we have an eyewitness that came out in the book who saw them fake the moon landing at Cannon Air Force Base on June 1st, 2nd, and 3rd of 1968. He even confessed to killing somebody to cover it up. And that's in my book, Moon Man, at Sibrel.com. It's in audio, Kindle, or print, and it has those 17 interactive video links that you can see on the website now. We have 4 times the proof, right? That one picture, shadows intersecting at 90 degrees, that's proof they didn't go. That's it. We have an eyewitness, deathbed confession. That would be enough to prove it in a court of law. We have them faking part of the mission right in front of your eyes. They're faking being halfway to the moon from Earth orbit, proving they never left Earth orbit. That proves it. And then we have the logic. You cannot have 1,000 times greater space traveling technology in 1969 than you can today. You cannot have greater technology in the past. Is there any device, any telephone, computer, microwave, anything from 1969 that its modern day equivalent is more advanced in the past and in the future?
Right.
I mean, come on. It's right there. But people don't want to give up the fact that their team won the Super Bowl and cheated to do so. They don't want to admit it. Even scientists say they know better than Neil Armstrong. They will not recant the glorious moon landings, proving they've made a god out of it and that they have no clear thinking about it.
The deathbed confession you're talking about is Cyrus Eugene Akers, right?
That's right.
He basically said that he witnessed the filming of the moon landing, and then he had to kill someone to keep it from getting out.
That's right.
I mean, I have a theory in this is a theory that I wanted to run it by you and see what you thought. What if we actually did go, but the footage and the pictures and everything are fake because our government didn't want to show the American people what was actually there, what was actually on the moon? Have you ever come across anything that would suggest that we actually did go and we're hiding?
The United States government doesn't care why you believe this little medical event over the last 3 years. They want you to believe that it's real.
Yeah.
They don't care why you believe it's real. If you believe it's real because it came from an animal in a marketplace, or if you believe it's real because it came from a lab leak, they don't care as long as you believe it's real. They don't care why you believe the moon landings are real as long as you do. Was it, to commune with aliens, on the other side of the moon or whatever? The fact is we have them in Earth orbit, faking being halfway to the moon 2 days into the flight, right?
Right.
So if they're walking on July 20th, how could they? Because they'd be a day and a half behind schedule, right? Because they're still in Earth orbit 1.5 days into the flight, where we show them faking being halfway to the moon with a 1 foot model of the Earth. So, and then why would the shadows be, intersecting? And if there were aliens on the moon, just have them move out of the way or move the camera over to where there are not any aliens there, right?
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? And now that the smartest AI in the world just said that the Apollo pictures are fake, that all the backgrounds are fake, they do not line up. Now they came out with a movie saying, okay, the moon missions are real, but we faked the pictures. No, people at the time were already doubting the authenticity of the moon missions. Before they left, 10% of the American public thought they were going to fake it. The last thing you would do if you were going to really go to the moon would be to fake any of it. And they didn't really care because during the alleged live landing, they just showed an Atari graphic with the wording simulation underneath it. We heard audio, but we had no live pictures during the landing. Why not? We had live pictures on the flight there. We had live pictures while they were there, allegedly. So why not have one during the landing, right?
Yeah.
Why not put a camera on the side of the rocket and show the descent live? That's what I would do if I were the director and the missions were real, but they weren't real. You see, they couldn't do it. They couldn't show the Earth getting bigger and bigger and all the real detail of the moon. They couldn't show the landing because they were not actually landing on the moon. So if you really went, you would never fake any of it for fear that you would be accused of faking all of it.
What is your thought on the Indian photos that they took on a flyby of the moon, and they showed the lander, and people were saying online that, okay, that proves it. There's the lander. This is taken from
Not
the
really.
Indian.
I mean, yeah. I have someone who works in the command center of the Chinese Space Agency.
Okay.
And they said everybody there knows that the missions are fake. They're blackmailing the United States for space technology that Congress forbid them to receive. So they're breaking, whoever runs the government, breaking federal law by giving them that technology in exchange for not being exposed. Satellite pictures can be intercepted and substituted with whatever. On close examination of the Indian probes, it looks like there are landers there, but if you look really close, they have 3 legs. Now, 3 legs is actually the proper design. If you wanted to land on an uneven terrain that was, hundreds of thousands of miles away, a tripod will always be stable regardless of whether it's on a hill or, tilted or whatever. A 4, how many times have you been to a restaurant with 4 legs and the table wobbles?
Yeah.
About every other time, right? So what they did apparently was they landed unmanned probes at the landing site to simulate transmissions coming from the moon. The Soviets did the same thing. The Soviets had a satellite go behind the moon or a spacecraft, and they claimed men were on board, but in fact they were not. They were transmitting voice to the spacecraft and then transmitting it back, and it appeared to be coming from the moon. So that's apparently what they did. They had already landed probes on the moon prior to allegedly walking on the moon, and they also took very detailed photographs of the moon, and they had I think a moon model that must have been at least 30 feet in diameter that they could easily use to simulate landing on the moon as well. So it appears that's what they did. They landed a probe there to make it look like transmissions were coming from the moon, and that's why they had 3 legs, because that would be the proper one. But the lunar lander actually had 4, so it's not the same spacecraft.
The other thing is the shuttle missions. You talked about an astronaut talking about how high they got, and they got too close to the Van Allen radiation belt and started seeing spots or getting affected by the radiation. That was on the shuttle missions, right?
Yeah, the highest space shuttle altitude was something around 365 miles. It was less than 400. And so the radiation field starts at about 1,000 miles above the Earth. So at a distance greater than 600 miles, if you were in the space shuttle facing the radiation belts and closed your eyes, you would see sparks of light, like fireworks, hitting the retinas of your closed eyes. That's pretty strong radiation, don't you think?
Yeah.
I mean, imagine where, pick a city that's 600 miles from where you are, and let's say they have a nuclear meltdown at a nuclear power plant. And if you face that direction and close your eyes, you can see the radiation 600 miles away. It's pretty severe radiation. And the commentator of CNN at the time said, quote, "The radiation belt surrounding the Earth is more dangerous than previously believed." This is from a crew that is more than 600 miles away from it. How can a crew more than 600 miles away from the radiation belt know more about its deadliness than the Apollo astronauts who allegedly went through it 6 times to the moon and back, right?
Yeah.
And then allegedly two more times in orbital missions, right?
Right.
How can they know more? Right? The radiation belt surrounding the Earth is more dangerous than previously believed, and that's reported from a space shuttle mission 600 miles away from the radiation. So how could they possibly know more about it than an Apollo crew, unless the Apollo crews never went through it? And that's what one of the clips at Sibrel.com says. He says, "We're surrounded by this deadly radiation, and we must solve these challenges before we send people through this region of space," meaning people have not been through this region of space, hence to the moon and the Apollo missions, and we must solve these challenges before, meaning the radiation shielding to survive has not been invented yet. That's why there's mannequins orbiting the moon, right? And not people, right? It's right there out of their own mouth. And people are going to believe what they want to believe. They don't want to give up that their team won the Super Bowl. I don't know what to say.
This radiation belt, for people that don't know, it is like a donut that surrounds the Earth. And only the North and South Pole would be the spots where you'd be able to pass through. Is it possible that we launched and went through those openings?
Well, you'd have to launch from the North or South Pole. According to the press kit given out at the Space Center during the time of Apollo, they went right through the middle of it. They'd have to. They don't have enough fuel to do anything other than achieve Earth orbit. So there's no fuel left over to zigzag, in a different direction. They could theoretically go through it if they launched from the North or South Pole. But that would mean building a launch site in well below zero. When the space shuttle, I think, went down to 38 degrees, which is still above freezing, it blew up. It damaged the spacecraft. So I think on the warmest day at the South Pole, it's probably 0 degrees. And you wouldn't be able to build a space center there. It would be too cold. It would damage the spacecraft, and it would just not be feasible.
Let's look at this here so that people can see. So this is what you were talking about with the
every manned mission has been only about 250 miles above the Earth. So just pick a place from where you live 250 miles away, make that vertical, and that's really as far as they go. Right now, the space station is only about 250 miles above your head. It's not very far. This radiation field begins 1,000 miles up, and it's 30,000 miles thick. And here you can listen to the guys say the technology to go through it has not been invented yet.
We are headed 3,600 miles above Earth, 15 times higher from the planet.
I'm not hearing audio on my end.
As we get further away from Earth, we'll pass through the Van Allen belts, an area of dangerous radiation.
You might need to add a button.
Radiation like this,
computer audio or something like that.
Onboard computers or other electronics
I can hear it on this end.
Naturally, we have to pass through this danger zone twice. Once up and once back. But Orion has protection. Shielding will be put to the test as the vehicle cuts through the waves of radiation. But Orion has protection. Shielding will be put to the test as the vehicle cuts through the waves of radiation.
But Orion has protection. Shielding will be put to the test as the vehicle cuts through the waves of radiation.
Sensors aboard will record radiation levels for scientists to study. We must solve these challenges before we send people through this region of space.
So I'll make sure that that's in the podcast. But he is saying that
we must solve these challenges before we send people through this region of space. So that means two things. We must solve these challenges, which are radiation protection challenges, before, meaning they have not been solved yet. And before we send people through this region of space, meaning people have not yet gone through that region of space. So he said two things. People have not yet gone through that region of space, and the technology necessary to help them survive doing so has not been invented yet. So that's two ways that he just said the Apollo crews did not go through the radiation belt, and therefore could never have walked on the moon because they'd have to go through it to reach the moon. Right?
Right.
And in Astronauts Gone Wild, we have, what's his name, Alan, saying that they did not go through it. And he's right. And then we have the crew of Apollo 11 saying, or basically faking, being halfway to the moon from Earth orbit. So we have the proof that Apollo 11 never left Earth orbit. We have Alan Bean saying that he didn't go through the radiation belt. And then we have Elon Musk just said, in order to go to the moon in a rocket 3 stories taller than the moon rocket, it's going to take a minimum of 15 fuel trips in order to have enough fuel to leave Earth orbit and land on the moon and have enough fuel to go back to Earth. Okay, so why does it today take 15 rockets of fuel to put people on the moon, and it was done in one rocket in 1969. Do they have more efficient fuel in 1969 than they do today? Wouldn't it be the other way around? Shouldn't it take less effort and energy to go to the moon today than it did back then? We have a printing of von Braun. He says, most people believe that you're going to go to the moon in one rocket. He says, but that is not possible. He said so himself. He said, these are mathematically irrefutable numbers. The smallest number of rockets would be 3 if they weighed 800,000 tons each and were taller than the Empire State Building and weighed 10 times the amount of the Queen Mary. The Saturn V was about 30 stories tall instead of 100, and it weighed 2,500 tons, not 800,000 tons. So that's a difference of 30,000% times 3 rockets. A recent TED Talk says they might need actually 24 fuel trips in order to go to the moon. And why is it that they can go to the moon in 1969 with one rocket, and now it's going to take, 15 to 24 fuel trips in order to put men on the moon? You see, we have a video of von Braun saying the largest rocket that man can build can only achieve Earth orbit. And from there, you'd have to ferry up fuel in multiple launches to have enough fuel to leave Earth orbit, go to the moon, and have enough fuel to come back. He said so twice, and Elon Musk said so, and the TED Talk said so, but did they do that to go to the moon? No, they didn't.
I didn't realize that in order to get the human lander to the moon, we have to launch a bunch of additional rockets to tank up in low Earth orbit. I didn't know that. And I'm like, well, how many rockets do we have to do that with? And they're like, 6. And then I start, because I know people, I start calling people. I was like, dude, really, how many rockets is it? They're like, well, boil off. And okay, so I was like, some people were like, well, it's looking like 8. I was like, 8 rockets? We have to fire 8 rockets to fire 1 rocket to the moon? And then they're like, I mean, that's what they're saying, but it's probably more like 12. Really? And then I was like, I'm an engineer. I know how to do this stuff. So I started to account for like nominal schedule slip and boil off. And this is how many rockets it's going to take to fuel up that thing to get it to the moon. I've done the math. If you had any questions, I'm joking. Remember, I'm the bad guy. I'm going to turn around and be the good guy in a minute. So the question is this smart? And now's the time where people are scared to talk again. Not efficient. It's not efficient. So in the bottom right, I've drawn a picture. I've picked a picture from the We Are Going video. That's how many rockets went to the moon and landed for Apollo, for all of Apollo. And I'll take you back to this chart. Okay, I've said enough.
What a surprise.
And I think that, people should go to your website and watch these videos. For me, when you bring up this thing about the fuel, that blew my mind, because probably like most people believed that the Saturn V could do it, all in one shot, because the way I understood it was the most fuel would be used to get out of Earth's atmosphere, because it's so thick. And then once we're out, it should just be smooth sailing. And the moon doesn't have an atmosphere, so it should be rather easy to lift off the moon and then come back. So the whole fuel thing.
Yeah, the difficult part is not the friction of air. The difficult part is achieving escape velocity because of gravity, and achieving 17,500 miles per hour minimum in order to balance gravity and achieve Earth orbit. So that's all that they were able to do in the Saturn V. Von Braun said that's all that they were able to do. And that's all that Elon Musk's rocket can do, even though it's 3 stories taller. Once it achieves Earth orbit, you'll have to ferry up multiple fuel trips in order to go to the moon. The guy who's an engineer during the TED Talk, I can send you the clip afterwards if you want to insert it.
Sure.
But he says he just discovered this, and he's a, quote, rocket scientist. He says he just discovered this, and he did the math. He lived his entire career in education on the assumption that they went to the moon. He says, but I did the math. It's going to take up to 24 fuel trips in order to go to the moon. This is why they destroyed the technology, because it could be proven in the schematics of the Saturn V that it didn't have enough fuel to leave Earth orbit, or it could be proven in the electronics of the lunar module that it didn't have enough battery power to combat 250-degree temperature outside with air conditioning running 24 hours a day for 3 days. You see, that's why they destroyed the technology. Why did they destroy all the original videotapes a few days before they were going to be transferred to HD IMAX? Because you could see the fake backdrops that the AI just said were fake. So I don't know what more to say. The most advanced AI says the missions are fake. They say to, repeat the moon landing, it's going to take 15 to 24 rocket launches for a single landing on the moon, which they never did. We have them faking being halfway to the moon. That 2 NBC News directors agree is them faking part of the moon mission, which they wouldn't do if they really went. We have shadows intersecting at 90 degrees. We have the logic, you can't have greater technology in the past and in the future. And we have an eyewitness deathbed confession.
Right.
That the moon missions were filmed at Cannon Air Force Base a year beforehand. What can you say? They faked the moon landing, and people just don't want to accept the cold, hard truth. The problem is, if they don't accept it, then these criminals are going to keep lying to the American people, keep deceiving them, keep embezzling their money, and keep killing them. Because according to the widow of the man who was going to be the first man to walk on the moon, he was murdered by the CIA. That's not my opinion. It's the opinion of the dead man's widow, who I interviewed for 4 hours. She said he was killed by the CIA because he wouldn't cooperate with fraud in the Apollo program.
That you're speaking about is Gus Grissom's widow.
That's right, and that's in my book Moon Man, which is at the website, and it's in audio Kindle print. I go into great detail about her confession. So not only are they faking moon landings, they're murdering people to cover it up. Now, our government was founded because of King George killing 5 people in the Boston Massacre.
Yeah.
5 people, right? Our founding fathers and mothers says that's it. And they created a document, the Declaration of Independence, that says when any government is destructive of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it. Well, what's the first one? Life. The CIA is murdering people to keep the moon landing fraud a secret. She said so. My eyewitness to the moon landing fraud confessed he killed somebody. We know of 1, 2, 3, 4 other people at least who were murdered by the CIA, and that's paid for by the taxpayers. We're paying for our own deception. We're paying the salaries of federal employees who are murdering our neighbors to keep their crimes a secret. That will continue until the moon landing fraud comes out.
I spoke with Jon Stewart recently, and I'm not sure if you know him. I think he said.
You mean from The Daily Show?
Jon Stewart from Chicago. He's an investigator on the Alien Interview from the 90s. I think he interviewed you a while back. And he had some problems with having his cell phone hacked and things like that. He spoke to you about it, and you had a similar incident where they took you or abducted you and tried to get you to shut up about this stuff. And were you in fear of your life, or were you just thinking that they just want to know what you know and get you to shut up about this stuff?
Well, I was producing the film, which took 7 years to make at a cost of nearly $1 million, financed by someone who builds rockets for NASA, who knows that it's fake, who thought it was his patriotic duty to expose it. I thought we'll never have proof, that whether they went or not. But I'll produce the film under the theory they might have faked it. I was shocked when 3.5 years into the 7-year project, we actually did find proof. The smoking gun, the video of them faking being halfway to the moon right in front of your eyes with a third track of audio of the CIA telling the astronauts not to reply until a 4-second pause went by to make it appear that they're beyond Earth orbit when in fact they never left Earth orbit. That convinced me and 2 NBC News directors and the Washington Post reporter that they did indeed fake the moon landing. Later that day, I was followed from church. My car was disabled. I was even, running for my life on foot. I went to CNN in a taxi cab overnight, was abducted at the back alley of CNN, given truth serum or something like that. I escaped. They heard me talk about this footage I uncovered, but had not seen it yet and did not want CNN to get it before they got a chance to look at it. So when I made my way back to Nashville, I peed in a cup to prove that I had been drugged illegally. And when I later, I put that, I think I gave it to a friend and put it in a lab in his name, trying to, get away with it. And unfortunately, I could not outwit the CIA. The lab reported that they had a break-in over the weekend and that the only thing stolen was my urine sample.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my run-in. At that time, I was definitely scared. I had a blind roommate. I had a toddler son, and I was like, oh my gosh, what have I done?
Yeah.
They really did fake the landing, and I had proof in my house. I was very scared. And then, running through Atlanta in the middle of the night through creeks and thorn bushes and climbing over barbed wire to get away from these people. All of that is in my book in a chapter. A funny thing happened on the way to CNN. And so be it. I did meet a couple of guys who seem to be working for the federal government who are good guys, like there's some sort of civil war going on between 2 spy agencies or something like that. Since then, the tape is out. People will deny it, proves anything. Like I said, people say a confession from Neil Armstrong that it was fake will not persuade them. They want to believe that it's real regardless. My source, who was there at Cannon Air Force Base when I was writing the book and confirming this information with the dead person's son, the son was visited by government agents about 3 years ago and threatened with death and the death of his family if he ever spoke to me again about his father's participation in the moon landing fraud at Cannon Air Force Base in Clovis, New Mexico. So that happened. I know that the White House investigated that. I know that the FBI investigated that, and the United States Senate Select Committee on Intelligence investigated this about three to 4 years ago when my source, a whistleblower, was, blackmailed, threatened by the NSA, CIA, or whoever. So the government knows, good guys in the government know that the moon missions are fake. I guess they're afraid to look bad. The problem is if you don't tell the truth about this horrific lie, then the lie prevails. The evil people prevail. And if you want a rallying cry to unite Americans against corruption, show them that they were duped 6 times like chumps about the moon landing fraud, embezzled from, murdered their friends and family to cover it up. Show the American public that, and you really have government reform if that is what the president really wants.
Yeah, and people can see all this stuff on Sibrel.com. You have a lot of links and a lot of information here. What I was going to say, I was going to ask you, do you know who Gary Mckinnon is?
No.
Okay, Gary Mckinnon was a hacker from the UK. I think about 2012, 2011, somewhere around there. He hacked into NASA's computers, and he saw some stuff on there, like spreadsheets and things that's talked about terrestrial captains or generals or military officials on other planets, things like this. And Obama tried to have him extradited but he was never extradited. But he talked about, us having other people in other places. Do you believe that that NASA does have people on the moon or other places? And not, I think there was a video not too long ago about, I guess it slipped about, I think it was a senator or something saying that he had spoken with somebody on the moon or a soldier on the moon. Has there been any evidence?
Well, no, I don't believe that.
Okay.
I was reading Joshua 9 recently.
Okay.
And at that time in history, Israel was told by God not to make peace treaty with anybody whose territory they touched. So anybody nearby them, they said, do not make a peace treaty with them. They will bring you down. So one of those countries heard that and disguised themselves. They loaded up donkeys with moldy bread, with torn clothes, with torn wineskins, with worn out sandals. And they deceived them with all this, quote, evidence that they were from far away. Please make a peace treaty with us. They made a peace treaty and later discovered they were their neighbor. And so they went through great depths to deceive people, just like they did with the moon landing. They have the moon rocks, even though one was opened and proved to be a piece of petrified wood.
Mm-hmm.
They had the images, the TV, the pictures. Of course, if they're lying, they're going to fabricate evidence of the fraud, of the counterfeit. When people counterfeit paintings of a Van Gogh, they try to find antique paint and antique canvases so that if they put under the microscope, the paint is from the 1800s or the canvas is from the 1800s, even though it is indeed a forgery. People are tantalized by the UFO subject. You have to ask yourself, how many congressional hearings are going on right now about 9/11? Zero.
Yeah.
Even though 3,000 architects and engineers say it's impossible for a pinhole airplane to go in and out and cause a grid to collapse.
Right.
Just look at Oklahoma City bombing. Half the building's blown away, still there. Not to mention Building 7 that allegedly collapsed the same day from a furniture fire. How many congressional hearings are there about that? Zero. How many congressional hearings are there about the Kennedy assassination? That the United States Senate committee said that there was a second gunman in 1975, and yet no one's done anything about it, right?
Right.
Why are there congressional hearings about UFOs? If UFOs were a secret, they'd be as secret as 9/11 and JFK. How many congressional hearings are about the moon landing fraud? None.
Yeah.
So why are there congressional hearings about UFOs? Because they want you to believe in them. 6 months ago, this guy is going around the network saying UFOs are real, UFOs are real. And when pressed on the issue, did you personally see a UFO? Well, no. Did you personally see an alien? Well, no. But my friends in the military said that they're real.
Mm-hmm.
The idea that someone can hack into something adds credibility that the information is real. But what if they planted it there for them to discover through a hack, you see, to make the information look real? There's a great book out called Privileged Planet that talks about how there should be life nowhere in the universe. The odds of there being life on Earth is like winning the Powerball lottery 20 times in a row. It can only be by design. This idea that life is plentiful everywhere, the exact opposite is true. I just came out with a second book at Sibrel.com called Aliens from Planet X that goes into my research of the top two UFO researchers, Jacques Vallée and Alan Hynek, who said, number one, UFOs are real. Number two, they're not from outer space, they're from Earth. And number three, they're demonic, that they're actually been here all along. They're fallen angels lying, because Lucifer is a liar. Apollo is from Revelation. Apollyon, the name for Lucifer, the great liar. Ancient Aliens admits that all humans came from one woman because that's what a DNA study called the Eve Project says. They took blood samples from all nations, traced it backwards, and said every human that is alive, was alive, will be alive, came from one woman, suddenly appeared in Africa, no one before her, no evolution. So they come out with this, okay, that really matches the Bible pretty close. How
Yeah.
can we say that's true because science said so, but there still not be a God? So they came up with, well, okay, we were made by aliens. Well, they never asked the third grade question, okay, if we were made by aliens, then who made the aliens, right?
Right.
And in Isaiah 14, it says that Lucifer wanted to take the place of God. So if aliens are really fallen angels and Lucifer is their leader, what they're really saying is mankind was made by Lucifer instead of God. And we show in the videos, I think there's 29 video links of the Planet X book, the 666 logo and the World Economic Forum, the 666 and CERN logo, 666 and the Google logo. And that's what these aliens really are. There is no life on other planets. We're being deceived. Von Braun, who faked the moon landing. I mean, the moon landing is like the greatest historic event in 2,000 years, right?
Yeah.
And it was completely fabricated. He said before he died, they're going to fake an alien invasion. Well, if aliens are real, then why would they have to fake it? You see?
Yeah.
That's why there's congressional hearings about it, because they want us to believe in it. It's tantalizing. Why not do congressional hearings on who shot JFK, 9/11, the moon landing fraud? They're not touching that. Oh, but aliens, they really want you to believe in those
Yeah.
with leaks and hacks and, a friend of a source. And it's like they're planting this evidence to be discovered, this contrived evidence, just like the moldy bread, the old sandals, the old wineskins that they deliberately put there to make it appear that they came from far away when in fact they were neighbors of Israel.
Yeah.
Nothing new under the sun.
Yeah.
I have a book about it that goes into great detail about this called Aliens from Planet X.
Aliens
What are
from Planet
aliens?
X.
Where do they come from? What are they up to?
Yeah. This when you mention all that stuff, the thing is that I think the general public believes what the official story is from TV, right? When we landed on the moon, that's all people had. People had the TV or the radio. And same thing with 9/11, same thing with Oklahoma City bombing. And there was, for you to question it or investigate it, it automatically falls into this whole conspiracy theory, because that's not what CNN said, or that's not what Fox News said. That's what makes this all more difficult, because you have some pretty compelling evidence here from whistleblowers.
Actually, it makes it all the more easier, is another way of looking at it, because the people who run the world can own all the media. So naturally, a gangster is going to frame somebody else, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's who Oswald was. He was the patsy. That's why he was shot, so that it would never go to trial. One of the clips at Sibrel.com for the Moon book is Dan Rather describing the Kennedy assassination for the audience. We're not going to show it to you, but let me describe it for you.
Yeah.
And he says the third final shot, Kennedy's head goes violently forward, and we synchronize it with the Zapruder film. And in fact, his head goes violently backwards. So the news media is saying the exact opposite of the truth about one of the most important events in the 20th century. They're saying the exact opposite of the truth. So the evil people who run the world, don't you think they know they have to control what people think? They have to make the guilty people innocent and the innocent people guilty, and they do that through the news media. There was an independent study of, I think, 1,500 newspapers, TV stations on the topic of should the CIA try to oust Chavez from South America. 1,500 allegedly independent news organizations, 100% of them said it's a good idea for the CIA to assassinate the guy. 100% of 1,500. That's remarkable. Another clip of my book, Moon Man, shows news stories that the lower right-hand corner, one says NBC, it later says CBS, it later says Fox, later says ABC, and they're all repeating the same story exactly word for word. Central Intelligence Agency information. They absolutely control the news. That's why they said the moon landings are real when they're fake. That's why they say Oswald killed Kennedy when he did not. That's why they said, guys with box cutters brought down the 3 buildings
Right.
when they did not. You see? And if they're saying aliens are real, then they're not.
Bart, we're coming up on the hour. I just want to thank you for sitting down with me and talking about this stuff. People can see all of your stuff on Sibrel.com. I'll link it in my description. And if you could send me that link to that TED Talk so I can input it in the video.
Sure.
But yeah, we should do this again. I definitely want to talk to you about your book, Aliens from Planet X. So we should set that up.
All right. Maybe you can read it and then contact me after you've read it.
For sure. All right, Bart. Well, thanks for coming on. We'll see you later.
Take care. All righty.